welcome to our old farm of our Farmstand, and we got all kinds of good vegetables and fruit. Tomatoes and basil. We got some cucumbers, apples, plums, more tomatoes, and sunflowers. We got carrots, lettuce, beets, and we also got some that I rolled some of my eggplants. I always want sunflowers or any kind of flowers right in the middle, or
All right, hey everyone, it's Steve and Emily from the Forbes Family Farm. Happy to be coming at you. It's not too late in the evening, but I guess the change of seasons is upon us, and it's becoming obvious to us where it wasn't just a few weeks ago we were out still doing chores at this time of night, and now all of a sudden it's dark and we're having to get all the ducks and chickens and everyone all locked up for the night, and getting the kids down to bed already. So it gives us a little extra time to shoot a video, and what we wanted to talk about with the change in seasons and what all of that brings has been a change in what we have going on, and the end of our market season is really coming upon us, and we wanted to talk a little bit about our experiences in our first year producing food and selling at a farmer's market, as well as here on the farm with a little farm stand that we kind of figured out how to set up. And Emma thought it'd be a good chance to maybe just talk about how we got into the farmer's market and how that came about. I know early on when we were talking about this year, and what I shared in some posts was that we really didn't have any intent of selling at a market or doing anything all that advanced in our first year. It was really just about seeing if we could actually grow food, and hoping that we had enough for us to enjoy. And how did that turn into us all of a sudden selling at a market for the last month?
Yeah, good question. So we did approach it just thinking about producing enough food for us, and then also seeing what worked down here. It's a little bit different climate up here. But we found ourselves probably about mid-August or so, all of a sudden things were taking off, and we had rows and rows and rows of lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers. And we thought, we don't want to waste all of this. I mean, granted, giving it to the yaks and chickens is fine, but if we could find a way to really start spreading this to our community, this would be a great opportunity to do it. So one day we were actually working out in the garage, listening to the radio, and we heard an ad for the Green River Farmers Market. And while we had done research on it months ago, had put it in my Excel spreadsheet of things in the local area, we hadn't really actually thought about it in a couple months. And so that inspired us to go back and research a little bit more, see what their requirements were. Every farmer's market is a little bit different, as we've learned. There are some farmer's markets where there is no vendor fee, up to, in this local area, up to $800 to participate in a season. So luckily the Green River Farmers Market had very low barriers to entry, and they were super excited to have us, especially having someone with fresh local produce. Most of the vendors there have phenomenal baked goods and salsas and hot sauces, but we were actually only the second produce vendor that they had there this season. So we got in touch with them literally the day before we showed up to our first market. So that night before, we were scrambling, trying to figure out what we could use for our displays and tablecloths. Again, most of our things are still in storage, and so from all of our experience with farmers markets in the Denver area, we knew that display was key. We wanted to have a great, really professional looking stand that showed off the produce that we've been working so hard to grow all season. So we scrambled through the shipping container, found what we could, found a variety of baskets and napkins and tablecloths that we could use to put together, and it turned out really well. I was actually very proud of what we could come up with in a 24-hour period. We went up, the kids did great. We were very fortunate that Steve's parents live about an hour away, which is really close to the Green River Farmers Market. So Steve's mom came over and helped with the kids, which was helpful. Having 3 little kids running around while you're trying to work a fair can be a little more challenging, but we had a lot of fun. We met some great people. Everyone was very excited to have us there, started developing some great relationships with the other vendors and with some of the locals who were regulars at the farmers market. So it was a fun first kind of dive into farmers markets. And we've definitely learned a lot and have some highlights. So,
Yeah,
Steve, what were some of
definitely.
your highlights for the year?
Thinking of the first week actually makes me think a little bit less about highlights and more about what we learned. I think that first week there, even though it's not a big farmers market and it wasn't like we were spending a lot of money and really reaching to get into this market and feeling like we had to go there and really perform in an incredible way, there's still a lot of anxiety I think that we felt just about what all do we need to get together. And you talked about just like table display, but even just the logistics of how do we get everything there and how do we make everything fit, and how do we keep everything at the right temperatures, and all of that was a bit of anxiety. And I think one of the things that stood out to me when I think back to that very first week that we were there, it was some of the simple things. We learned so much in that first week. Our customers were very gracious with us because there's really simple things that are like, in the moment, we were just hitting our heads going, how did we forget this? It was, just bags for people to be able to take the produce in. We had all this produce, all this great product. People were really excited about it, and they'd come in and they'd want, some lettuce and some radishes and carrots and different things. And then they'd have this bundle of things that they wanted. And we were like, we've got no bags or anything to put this in or send you away with. And so we were, running around to other vendors, and we were very fortunate. Like you said, there's some great vendors at this market who were very friendly and helped make it a comfortable experience for us to join the market and be there. And some of them helped us out, giving us bags so that we could actually have something to give our customers. And that was one surprise that I had, and a quick learning moment. And then to think, we only did this for the last month of the market, so really only 4 weeks. And then over that time to just realize how each week we learned little things like that. And by even in 4 weeks, it felt like we'd progressed so far. And we had bags with our logos stamped on them and our address and the kind of the whole get up. And so that was pretty cool to see how we progressed in that regard. Anything else that caught you off guard or surprised you about the market?
That's a good question. I do think the setup and takedown was a little bit of a learning curve as well, especially because that first week we ended up getting rained out and it was just a crazy torrential downpour. So in order to have a booth, you actually have to have weights for your canopy, especially up here in the Wyoming, Utah area. There are some crazy winds. And so we had brought some bags of cement because that's what we had available. Turns out if they get wet, really not convenient to work as weights, and so we ended up having cement all over the place because the bags ripped as we tried to move them at the end of the night. And so that first takedown was rough. And so we literally were trying to just like shove everything that we could into the truck, get to Steve's parents' house where we could unload it a little bit more, try to resort, reorganize, figure out what in the world we were doing, and make it back home. But that was an interesting first experience.
We learned a lot, that was for sure. But we also built some some of the customers that we met in that first week are some of our most loyal customers and people who I think you asked what was the high or the best thing about the markets. And I think one of the highs for me was once we got to the end of the market, and we'd only been there for 4 weeks, and it wasn't like we were well-established member of the market. But already we had people who were coming to our booth and coming to us saying, hey, a friend said that I had to come see you guys, that your lettuce was the bomb, or coming to us and saying, I heard your beets are amazing, I need to try some of your beets. And so the fact that we were already getting traction with referrals and people having interest in what we were doing was really gratifying to me, and that felt very fulfilling in the sense of what we're doing is valued, and it's something that the community wants and desires. And to your point about us being one of only 2 produce dealers at this farmers market, we were really the only farmers at this farmers market. So I think the organizers were really excited to have us there, and I think customers and people at the market kind of recognize that as well. And while there were, as is common in many farmers markets, there's another booth that sells produce. That's they're just taking produce from multiple farms, some states away, and bringing it and selling it at the market, for the customers to actually be able to come and see us, and for us to be able to say, we grew everything that's here, and if you've got questions about it, ask us, and we can tell you the specific varieties and why we grew them and how it went and how some varieties didn't do well, and how watch out on those cucumbers because they're pickling variety and they're not going to be an awesome cucumber if you just cut into it and start eating it raw. And so things like that I think are what really meant a lot to people, and it then in return meant a lot to us when people were recognizing it and referring us to other friends, and we definitely, that last week was our most successful week because we were starting to get some traction, and so sets us up to be really excited for doing the market again next year and being more prepared for it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that stood out to me as well is just some of the relationships we started to build that go beyond just the farmers market. So already we've actually had a woman and her kids who homeschools and leads one of the homeschooling groups up in the local area come down to the farm, and her boys helped us pick some apples just yesterday, and she's going to work on arranging a field trip for the local homeschooling community to come down here. And we actually met a new writing instructor at the community college, and she's doing a whole class where they're really focusing all of their research and their writing on food and food-related topics. So they're coming down in 2 weeks to come down to the farm. So we're excited to really build into the educational piece as well. I think that's been something that's really important to both of us, and that's an area of passion for us. And so it's great for us to already start building those connections and to find ways to get people onto the farm, to see what we're doing, to hear about some of the practices, because some of them are a little more non-traditional than what you find in kind of traditional agriculture. And so for us to get to share some of the science and the research behind it in a way that's still approachable, even for 7-year-old, 5-year-old kids. It's been fun just to watch our own kids kind of absorb some of that and then be excited to share that with other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had success there at the farmers market, and we realized it's not that difficult to sell produce in the sense of setting up a stand, and it's just a matter of finding a way that you can drive some traffic to it. And so we tried to take our experience at the farmers market and translate it into something that's even easier in terms of us, the amount of effort we have to put in. And we started setting up a farm stand right here on the property. We're in an area where there gets a little bit of tourism traffic up and down the Forest Service Road that we live on, and there's also a great community, small community, but a great community right around us with an interest in local food and quality food. And so we were able to start marketing just to our local community and catching traffic as they come by setting up a farm stand, and basically just taking the same model that we practiced at the farmers market and taking some of the things that worked there and doing it right here on the roadside. And that's been great for us, and even more so having that relationship building and building relationships with people who live right in our community, and who have become really loyal customers, and we're very proud and thankful for them. People who look forward to the stand being open each week and coming by, and whether it's varying up what they get and trying new things, or coming for that really consistent tomato that they've now had a couple weeks in a row. That's very cool to see as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's really fun too, because I think our kids are a little bit more involved when we're here on the farm. They're a little more comfortable. We're kind of on our turf, so to speak, and they feel like they can kind of run back and forth, and they can help us gather more things. So for instance, really early on today, we sold out of all of our cherry tomatoes, and so we got to head on over, and I had a couple kids, one kid on the back, one kid helping me, and we got to pick a few more, bunches of tomatoes to be able to go sell just right there on the stand. So it's nice and convenient that we didn't have to pack up all of that produce and really be more or less stuck with what we had. Instead, we could be a little more flexible and say, okay, great, you want 2 more heads of butter crunch lettuce? Let us go run on over, and we'll just cut it out for you right now from the garden. So that's been really fun, and it has been a great community builder too. I mean, just even for instance, this evening we were out at a dinner, and there are a few people that came up to us. I was wearing my Forbes Family Farm shirt today. So a few people came up and said, oh, we saw your information, you're on the Facebook page, and we didn't stop by today, but we'd love to come next week, and we love what you're doing. We're so glad that you're here. And so that's just been a fun way to feel like we are contributing and adding value already, even though we've only been here about 4 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the funny things is we've learned, and maybe this is true of all farmers markets, or maybe it's just true of this area, that we've learned both with the market as well as with the farm stand that in this part of the world, people arrive on time and arrive early. And that was definitely a lesson that we learned early on with the farmers market. It's an afternoon farmers market that runs from about 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And by about, it seemed like consistently 4:14, so 14 minutes into the market, it felt like we'd already been working for a full hour selling product, and that was our busiest stretch of time was technically before it even opened up. And the same's been true at the stand here, and that I think speaks to the amount of excitement that people have. And we've had people who really want to get to us early because they want to make sure that they get that specific produce that they want, and that they're worried someone else is going to want as well. And so that's been exciting, and we've definitely learned a little bit to plan ahead a little bit. And that's a key to success with the farm stand and the market is being prepared and being ready early for those early comers.
Exactly.
Anything else about markets that we should share, or that you think are key takeaways?
Yeah, so I think as we go into the winter season, I mean, obviously things will slow down here. There are still a few events that we might consider going to, especially if we have an increase in egg production. We have quite a few of the chickens that should start laying here within the next couple weeks. So seeing just what that looks like, there are some opportunities to do a little bit during the winter, but I think for the most part, this will be a time for us to really again, kind of hone in on what we're doing, really plan out our season, and get a better sense of what varieties of produce people want. So for instance, Steve mentioned we had pickling cucumbers, and we had awesome pickling cucumbers. We have pickles galore in our fridge and in our pantry, but we didn't actually plant anything that was just really a good eating cucumber, and we got requests for that all season long. So again, little things like that, I think we'll have to go back and review what worked really well, what do we think there's a need for in this area, what do people really want. Hot peppers is another one. We got a lot of requests for hot peppers, and we didn't really have many. So again, I think we'll spend the winter really being more strategic and more thoughtful about what we're planting, really planning our successions well so that we have produce all season long. Again, since we were just doing a market here for the end, we had a lot of produce because everything was in season all at the end, but we'll want to be strategic about that to make sure that really starting at those first few markets, we still have some great produce to offer. So I think that will be a big thing for us to work on this winter, as well as all of the fun key marketing things, which are the things that I love. So we'll get a cool sign and banner and all those fun things too.
Yeah, I think absolutely, and we're really looking forward to jumping back into the market activities next year and seeing if there's opportunities in additional markets, and where exactly the best opportunities lie without overextending ourselves. I think is a key point, because we definitely learned that the markets can be a lot of work, and again, that's just finding that balance for us of what's doable. But it's something that we've really enjoyed, something we're looking forward to doing more of, and one that we definitely encourage anyone out there who's thought about trying to sell at a farmer's market or trying to sell your own products. There's definitely, whether it's your own baked goods or something that you're adding value to, or whether you're farming and growing your own food, or just backyard gardening and have an abundance that you want to share. There was definitely that nervous moment of realizing like we're kind of putting ourselves out there selling something that we produced, and neither of us really being in a professional place in the past where we were selling our own product that much. I think that was a moment that we had to kind of work through, and just definitely encourage everyone. It's been incredibly satisfying for us. It's been something that we've been very grateful for, and we've really appreciated the customer relationships that we've developed in taking that leap of faith. And we encourage everyone out there who's ever thought of it yourselves there's so many things that you can think of to stop yourself, but you've really just got to be willing to step off that ledge and do it. And I think that you'll find it to be incredibly satisfying as well, like we have.
Exactly.
So, all right, thanks, and keep following along. We'll share some more stories from the farm, and I think maybe the next time we'll tell you a little bit more, and maybe get a video together with all the animals we have here on the farm.
Yes.
Take care.